We all think we're smart. We think we can spot a trap a mile away. But when you're desperate, when you're down to your last few dollars and your landlord is threatening to evict you, your judgment gets clouded. That's when you start making excuses. That's when you start believing things that are too good to be true. In the winter of 2022, I found an ad on Craigslist for a live-in custodian for a private medical storage facility in a remote part of Oregon. The pay was insane, $6,000 a month, cash. All I had to do was maintain the building and ensure the security of the biological assets. I figured, hey, it's just security, but I should have asked what kind of biological assets they were storing. I should have asked why the entry required a biometric scan. And I really should have wondered about the room on the lowest level, the one always bathed in a soft, pulsating red light. The facility was a bunker-like concrete structure hidden in a dense pine forest. It was silent, sterile, and always freezing. My apartment was on the top floor. It was nice, but I never felt alone. There were cameras in every corner. I knew I was being watched, but for $6,000, I could handle the surveillance. The manager, a man named Dr. Vance, gave me my only rules. Never touch the freezer units, never enter the lowest level without him, and most importantly, if the pulse sounds, you ignore it. The first week was uneventful, but on the 8th night, I heard it, a faint, low-frequency throbbing sound. Thump, thump, thump. It wasn't mechanical. It felt organic, like a massive, slow-beating heart, and it was coming from the lowest level. I stood at the elevator, my hand trembling over the button for B4. Every instinct I had screamed at me to go up, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. I pushed B4. The elevator doors opened to a different world. The lowest level wasn't sterile concrete. The walls were covered in a glistening gray polymer-like substance. The floor was wet, coated in a viscous clear liquid, and everything was bathed in that soft, pulsating red light. The throbbing sound was deafening now. Thump, thump, thump. I realized the light wasn't pulsating. The gray substance on the walls was. It was inhaling. At the end of the corridor was a massive, industrial-sized tank made of reinforced glass. Inside wasn't a biological asset. It was a man, or what used to be a man. His skin was gone, replaced by the gray substance that covered the walls. He was fused to a massive machine that was pumping the clear liquid through his open veins. His eyes were wide, and through the glass, I could see that his lips were sewn shut. He was alive, and he was staring right at me. He tapped on the glass. 3 slow taps. The sound echoed through the silent, pulsating room. And then, from the machine next to the tank, a voice synthesized. "Leo," it croaked. "The assets require a new host. You have a very strong heartbeat." I didn't think. I scrambled toward the B4 button, but Vance fired. The tranquilizer dart hit me in the shoulder. My legs immediately turned to jelly. I collapsed onto the viscous, wet floor. The last thing I saw before blacking out was Vance's face looming over me and the gray substance on the walls, pulsating with increased franticness. I wasn't just fired. I was recruited. When I woke up, I was outside, in my own bed in my apartment. The facility was gone. The forest was empty. Vance was gone. But something was wrong. My chest was tight. My heart was beating too slowly. I looked in the mirror. I couldn't see anything on the outside. But when I listened closely, I didn't hear a normal heartbeat. I rented a room to a man named Silas on Craigslist. He was quiet, always paid in cash, and barely left his room. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in a big city. The only problem was the sounds. Every night around 2 a.m., I'd hear a strange, wet ripping sound coming from his room. Rip, rip. I peeked through the keyhole one night. The room was empty. But then I looked up. Silas was on the ceiling. He was naked, his limbs distorted and long like a spider's. He was holding a large, sharp object, a scalpel, and he was carefully peeling a single thin layer of skin off his own leg. He was making his own collection. When the police found him, his room was a gallery, hundreds of small, perfect squares of human skin, pinned to the wall like a butterfly collection. They were all from his previous roommates. I was supposed to be the final piece. This happened to a friend of mine, Kyle. He was an aspiring photographer looking for unique subjects. He found an ad on Craigslist from a man named Silas, who claimed to be a retired Hollywood prop master. Silas said he had a collection of incredibly realistic human models and needed someone to photograph them for a private catalog. He offered Kyle $500 for a single afternoon. The house was in rural Ohio. When Kyle arrived, Silas, a man who looked like he hadn't slept in a decade, led him to a large barn behind the house. The barn was cold and it smelled of chemicals. Formaldehyde and something else? Something metallic. The models are in the back, Silas said, his eyes never leaving Kyle's neck. Just don't touch them. They're very delicate. Kyle started taking photos. The models were incredible. The detail was terrifyingly real. The pores in the skin, the slight yellowing of the fingernails, even the way the eyes seemed to follow the camera lens. He reached out to adjust the lighting, and his hand accidentally brushed against the arm of a model posed as a seated girl. It wasn't plastic. It wasn't wax. It was cold. But beneath the coldness, he felt a bone, a real human radius. Kyle's breath hitched. He pulled back the plastic sheet just an inch. He saw a small surgical stitch running along the girl's jawline. And then he saw the eyes. Not glass, but real human eyes that had been preserved. They weren't just models. They were people. Stuffed. Taxidermied. He heard the barn door creak shut behind him. Silas was standing there, holding a long, curved bone saw. "I told you," Silas whispered. "They are very delicate. Now, you've ruined the pose. I suppose I'll have to start over with a fresh one." Kyle didn't scream. He just ran. He dived through a small window in the back of the barn, cutting his arms on the glass. He sprinted into the cornfield. The tall, dead stalks slapped against his face like cold fingers. He could hear Silas behind him. He wasn't running, he was laughing. A wet, wheezing sound. "You have such perfect bone structure, Kyle. You'll be my masterpiece." Kyle reached his car, fumbled with the keys, and floored it just as Silas slammed the saw into the driver's side window. The glass shattered, but Kyle didn't stop. He drove until he found a state trooper 5 miles down the road. When the authorities raided the farm, they found 12 models in the barn. All of them were missing persons from the last 3 years. All of them had responded to Craigslist ads for modeling or caretaking. Silas was never found. But a month later, Kyle received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single high-resolution photo. It was a photo of Kyle, taken from inside the barn window, just as he was breaking out. On the back, written in red ink, were the words, "See you for the next session." Kyle moved to a different country. He hasn't picked up a camera since.